Hey everyone, welcome to another Manic Monday. I wanted to talk to you about something today that I have really been struggling with. I've been working really hard on, and that is some self care. And along with that, some self love, because the two things are pretty connected. It's something that I struggle with as I work and am a mother and a grandmother and a sister and a friend. Is where do I fit into all of that? And I think it's something that probably many of you are struggling with, particularly as we support so many others around us in our families, in our communities. Maybe we're a leader at work or we run our own business like I do. You have so many other people you have to look after and you forget to look after yourself. So I wanted to talk to you today about that because that's something that I have really been thinking about and working on because it's something I don't do very well. So particularly because I am a people pleaser, my first response is to make everybody else happy, to say yes, that so that everyone else feels happy and accommodated and comfortable, and sacrifice my own self. And I think probably so many of you are the same way. So there are lots of things we can do, and we hear about them quite a bit, or we see them on Instagram, hashtag self-care. Somebody's getting a pedicure or a massage, or even having a cup of tea or going for a nice walk. Those are all actions that do provide some self-care. But those things are really momentary and they're a little bit fleeting. So I've been thinking about what are the things we need to do that really support ourselves from within, that really not just make us feel better in the moment, but really make us feel better about ourselves and from the inside out. So here's a couple things that you may not have considered before. So the first one is saying no. Saying no is actually an act of self-care and an act of self-love. So again, if you're a people pleaser like me, your first response is always yes. You want to make other people happy because that in the end means that they might love you a little bit more. And the truth is that is a complete lie. That's one of your saboteurs telling you that. That's garbage. They're going to like you whether you say yes or not. You also have a little bit of fear of missing out. I mean, that FOMO piece, right? You always want to be in on the activity. I know I certainly do. So the actual activity of saying no and doing that with conviction and doing that because it's based in your values and because it actually serves you, not because it serves someone else, is actually an act of self-care. So the next time you want to say no and you think you need to say yes, I want you to stop and recognize that saying no actually doesn't do them a disservice, but saying yes will absolutely do you a disservice. So the next thing is having one of those difficult conversations. So if there's someone in your sphere, in your family, maybe you're a leader, you need to have a difficult conversation with someone at work, you need to bring up a challenging topic. Maybe someone's not performing. Maybe someone in your family is really off their game. Maybe someone's looking, angry or hurt, and you need to reach out to them and connect with them. That is actually an act of self-care. In actually having that difficult conversation and saying to someone, hey, what's up? Something here isn't working. And particularly, it's not working for me and it doesn't look like it's working for you. That is actually an act of self-care, to step into that conversation and to make that kind of statement and connect in that way that's really vulnerable. So the other thing is leaning into something that's really hard. So we all have things we don't want to do, and we tend to avoid them. But the truth is, when we actually lean in to that challenging situation or that difficult project or that item on our to-do list that we don't want to do, that is actually an act of self-care because we're cognizant that there is a challenge there for us, and we're accepting that challenge. And in accepting that challenge, we are showing up differently just for ourselves. Doesn't need to be for anybody else. And that is an act of self-care and self-love. And then, making decisions in all of this that are based on our values. That we know instinctively that that's the right choice for us because that's what we value the most. And that goes for all of these things I've just talked about. So whether it's saying no, because it's based on my values, whether it's having a difficult conversation because maybe some of your values are being challenged, it's leaning into something that's difficult for us because that's a space where we have a value that's in conflict or isn't being honored. And just the act of understanding your values itself is an act of self-care. So knowing what's really important, what's foundational to you, and not just knowing what it is, but actually practicing it and bringing it into your life more consciously. That's an act of self care because the truth is, when we know what we are made of, when we understand what our values mean, when we know what's important to us and why we do things, then we can be more in line with what makes us who we are. And that in itself will help us to care for ourselves more deeply and show up as a more wholehearted human. So, those are the things that I think are actually acts of self care and self love that we may not be conscious that we might be missing. So, I hope that that gives you something special to think about on this Manic Monday.